This is the CCW Digital Speaker Spotlight Series. I'm Brian Cantor, Principal Analyst for CCW Digital, and your host for today's discussion. I'm going to begin by addressing a simple reality. Great ideas are important, but clear purposes are essential. You can come up with the most amazing concepts for your customer experience. You can start to embrace these really exciting technology solutions. You can start to think about very progressive and creative metrics. You can really focus heavily on employee wellness and culture. But at the end of the day, can you answer a simple question? Do you have a purpose for each of these endeavors? Now let me rephrase that. Do you have a purpose that other stakeholders will understand? As a contact center or customer experience professional, you're already bought into the value of customer centricity. You already know why endeavors that are good for the customer experience are good for the business and do make sense. And as an employee and a manager, you obviously get culture. You value the idea of making your contact center, making your customer experience a good place to work. But the real question is, will those on the outside look in and want to become insiders based on what they're seeing? Will they understand the intent, the purpose, the value behind each of your strategies and initiatives? This is a big focus for Deb DeNure of Humana, and she's going to be sharing some insights at CCW Nashville this January. We're also thrilled that she's going to be part of our ongoing CC Women campaign to share some of her guidance in that capacity as well. So a lot coming up with Deb. We're really thrilled to be working with her ahead of Nashville. But before we get there, we wanted her to share some insights with our audience today. So Deb, how is everything?
Hi, thanks, Brian. I'm glad and happy to be part of the series. Everything is going terrific.
Absolutely. We're, as I mentioned, thrilled to have you, and more importantly, excited for the insights that you're going to share both now as well as in Nashville. This idea of having a purpose behind everything is really valuable, and what I like about it is it's something that you take seriously. You have so many creative ideas and so many things that are working, and they really are tied to a central purpose, a central goal, and I think that's going to be very valuable for our audience to see that you can be creative, you can be innovative, you can be fresh, you can be exciting, and still think about that kind of big picture as well and make it work. So really thrilled on that.
I think one of the things that's exciting for me to be part of the conference is not only just talking about intent and purpose, but delivering that customer experience and always keeping the end in mind before we start anything. I think one of the things that we often do as professionals and you listed a litany of things that we do to create that excitement and all the fun things we can engage people in. But if we don't have a solid pathway, a solid runway that brings the value, that brings the intent, that drives to the end goal, the actual purpose, then we miss the mark at times. And sometimes we look at why did this campaign turn out to be what I thought it was going to be. And a lot of times we take a tactical approach versus a strategic approach. So the things I'm going to share at the conference is how that strategy and tactic and purpose and intent really drives a consumer engagement platform.
And speaking of end goals, our end goal for today's conversation is really to empower people to think about it the same way. And I'm sure you're going to have those insights throughout. So starting off, one of the things, and certainly to some extent it's a play off your company's name, but I also think it just embodies your philosophy, is the idea of being human-centric. That's a big focus for you, and I'd imagine it trickles down to all parts of the experience. So at the high level, can you explain sort of what being human-centric means and where it sort of fits into your customer experience strategy?
Yeah, so the customer experience strategy is really around that. I mean, to the end of mind, it's really for us framing up what that consumer experience is going to be. And in my business world, in our learning team, it's really about what we do to help create the most fabulous experience as a member that needs healthcare services. And when you think about the planning or the initiatives or the goals or the value that you need to bring, we always lead with people first. So people first from our consumers, but as a commercial group, we also have to think about my staff and the types of employees and that we arm our employees with the ability to really bring their best selves to work each and every day. That takes a bit of work-life balance. It takes a bit of really embracing that we all have unique thinking habits and how those thinking habits drive and shift the behavior and how that then creates a particular result. So, kind of if you want to think about the whole process, is that we drive our business results by embracing our unique differences and insights with each one of our team members and how they go about creating those conversations to build those experiences and those relationships through our different values and behaviors. And then that in itself will create an experience for the end user that, in our case, we always are looking at NPS scores. So we want those to improve the experience from each one of our members. But that's kind of the tactical piece, and strategically, it's all about first creating those insights and then creating that work-life balance. We do that with the staff. That transcends to the customer experience. That transcends then to retention, or in our case, additional sales. So hopefully that will kind of give the audience a little clue or a little piece of insight that during the conference we'll talk about how do we create those experiences and what tactics do we take, what strategies we embraced, and then create some best case or scenarios that this balance, this human-centric side of using people and their experiences, the insight, the wisdom in the room, so to speak, to drive those end results and drive those customer experience is one that endears those consumers to stay with you. And so that it helps build sales, helps to create retention of those sales, but most importantly, it's about the experience of the consumer that sticks with a particular product line or a service that is really meant for them.
Yeah, and I love right there how you're basically using humanity, using the idea of being human-centric as a calibration point of sorts. When you look at any different focus, be it agent experience, be it technology, be it how you're building your customer interactions, they're really built around that idea, that end goal, that making things more human, making things more logical and valuable for the people with whom you're interacting. And over the course of today's conversation as well, I want to dive into sort of how that calibration defines the particular initiatives that you're working on. And one of those is actually the Bold Goal program that you have. And I'm wondering if you can explain how that works and sort of why this fits into this human-centric model.
Well, it does. So Bold Goal is an initiative that Humana focuses on about creating an experience within the markets that, for us, by 2020, we help improve the health and well-being of the people we serve in the markets that we serve. And so rather it be around, financial insecurities, food insecurities, service insecurities, our goal is around increasing that experience within those communities. And by kind of following a very simple premise that our insights and our thinking habits build relationships and behaviors, and those behaviors drive particular results, we are working with community leaders and foundational efforts within a community to actually help them improve their well-being. And in our world, that really transcends to reducing healthcare costs, because if we're looking at keeping people well, then we have the great opportunity to make sure that we keep costs that would infringe upon someone's financial well-being in the forefront. The game, the well-being or the end game in mind is to maintain that financial security. And the second piece of that, the Go Bold project, really focuses on is food insecurity, because we know that in the United States, that is one of the main components of folks not staying well, is the ability for them to eat properly, to make sure that they have the right types of foods to sustain their well-being. And we have a lot of efforts around that. So we take a great pride in this idea of staying curious about how to help others be better in their communities, thus improving their own well-being as well as their community's well-being as a whole. I'm glad you brought that up. It's one of the things I'll be talking about as a case study.
Definitely, and I think when
during
you
our
have
time together,
when you have that high-level vision for what you're trying to achieve, I think it makes everything make sense. And certainly, I think it also trickles into the agent experience question. And so, obviously, there's two facets to the agent experience, right? There's that kind of the way your brand feels about your employees, so how you interact with them, what kind of resources you provide for them, what kind of sort of soft culture you build around working for your brand. And then there's also the day-to-day, the tools they're using, the metrics they have, the training they have access to. And so I'm wondering how you sort of balance the two areas of the agent experience, that you have this bold vision for making them healthier, making life better, making them more empowered human beings, while also thinking about what it takes to execute their jobs.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it crosses all segments. I think one of the things that I found, I can tell from my personal experience, just working within Humana, we really believe in our values. So we live the values. Rather it be rethink routine or celebrating our uniqueness or pioneering simplicity. We always have a purpose behind whatever we do. And you mentioned, how do we balance it all? One of the strategies, and I'll be talking more about this as well, is being intentful around something, or with intention around what we call a purposeful pause. It's about being mindful, to step away, to slow down our brains, to take a moment to pause, to breathe. And if we can enable or empower our staff to do that for themselves, they then, when there's a high intensity or especially around healthcare, it can be a very traumatic events that happen in a person's lives. If we can help then our members navigate through those life challenges, through these sentinel events that perhaps comes up in their families, then we're able to teach through us creating those experiences through that kind of pause tactic or strategy that allows everybody to stay well, under crisis. Because when you need your health insurance or you need a care plan, or you need a plan for an elderly parent, those are all times when our minds get really busy. And so one of those foundational principles that we teach and that we transfer is this notion of a purposeful pause, and to take sort of a little brain break so we can refocus and help gather or gain the next steps, or gain momentum, what to do next. So that is something that we work with the staff on a regular basis. That's something that my team in the learning group really goes out and sets this notion of that we make the difference. It's a cultural, I don't want to say expectation, but we really look at and strive to be our best selves. We come with the mindset that intention and the ability to make a difference is part of our job. So if we're able to stay to that notion, we will get the result, the business result, because everybody's accountable for how they think about things and how they behave, and that transcends to us being consumer-centric. To your point about, leading with the human side of how we have to do business. And it's not just by numbers and spreadsheets and tallies and totals that sometimes in call centers or customer service centers that we, lose this idea that there's an actual person's experience at the end of the line. And maybe that is something that I think we all can learn from some of the things we do at Humana, is that the person is the reason why that call center is there. It's not about how quick, we need to take the call. It's about actually looking at and understanding and positioning where that consumer is coming from and putting yourself in those shoes.
And yeah, one of the things that you value is the idea of not just sort of being member-centric in concept, but also tying it to member outcomes that you talked about. So thinking about, humanity, thinking about being member-centric, member-driven, a lot of times there might be an instinct to say, this is a know it when you see it kind of dynamic. It's if it feels like we contribute to humanity, if it feels like we were nice to the customer, we must have done right. And while we would all love to live in that world, probably, this is business, right? We are held to metrics, we're held to performance standards. And so how do you start to quantify some of these humanity components?
Well, quantify, and I'm going to pick out a word. It's like, what does it mean to be nice, right? So it's an interesting concept when we think about, I was nice on the phone. If it doesn't meet the caller's need, then where does nice fit in? So how do we quantify that? For us, it's through our retention metrics, reduction of calls that come into the call center. It could be that we've had an improvement on the types of calls, or the more pushing to more self-service options as well. But if we're able to inform, and we have sort of it's called a TAC. So if we can teach, advise, or coach, it's something that through our experience that we're able to then get some metrics around the types of calls that people are calling in on. And if we've been able to improve the experience by teaching them something, by advising them on something, or perhaps coaching them, especially with the wellness pieces, coaching them on something to do something same or different, then those three tactics allow us to measure the types of calls that might come in that we're handling on a basis. So we do, and you were right, we have to measure. We're based on our metrics, but I don't know how many folks are looking at the performance side. We often, in our learning team, we look at how the performance has shifted, how the interaction of the experience has happened. And that's different from saying, does somebody know something to do something differently? But is it an experience that they will remember, and can they perform that experience to do that experience, repeatedly and sustainably, over a period of time? And how we get to know if that happens is that the call type's really the things that we measure the most, or the things that maybe don't come up as crises more often. We know we made a shift in how performance happens. So whatever our team members have done has really added an impact to the overall experience, thus the call types change.
And when you talk about things like...
There's a couple little pieces of parts.
Yeah, definitely. When you talk about things like reductions in call volume, and when you talk about sort of different areas where you can demonstrate, I think you made an impact, naturally digital engagement comes up. And you even alluded to self-service as well. And so how do you sort of, when you take this humanity concept, you take this idea of being member-centric, how do you kind of make sure that when you involve digital channels, when you involve self-service, that you're keeping that humanity, keeping the member, keeping the customer at the forefront, so that you're chasing a better experience and not chasing cheaper calls, lower call times, and those kind of efficiency metrics?
Yeah, so there's a couple things, and this is really, I don't know if it's Humana, across all lines of business, but in our world, we like to do more of a give to get programming, or a give to get strategy. It's tactics. So think about call volumes. People call in, how we contact them. We do a lot of research about what's the best way. Is chat, or IMs, or some of the new digital means of staying connected, using social media, as ways to stay connected. That's all important. But it's one of these strategies where you delight the customer, you give the consumer something that they didn't expect. It could be an article, YouTube, video of something might be interesting based on the conversation. So we do a lot with our kind of our associates learning platforms around listening. And so if you really listen and you're present and you pick up something that was really important to that call and to that experience, and if you can go beyond just the getting whatever the question is answered and provide a little extra something that consumer didn't expect, that helps to shift those experiences as well. So we can use that digital platform of pushing so those extra what we call it customer delight or little endeavors, any type of article or program or something that would be of interest to them. Could be even a community event that you know about that our associates are able to talk or send to that person. So that's another something that I'll talk about during our time together during the week is how do you engage in that? Like what is the tactical and strategic approach in developing this accountability model with your associates, with the folks that work in your departments? Like how can you embrace the ideology, but also how do you then implement this practice of truly listening and connecting with consumer on a higher level than just quickly answering and get off the phone, answer, get off the phone. We have a culture of non-connection, and we take the approach that we need to connect, listen, and in our case, we are a partner for life. So in the wellness side and insurance side, you need insurances, when you're born all the way through some, wellness activities, but even at the end of life, what are some things that you need? So as a partner for life is one of our also main BOGO initiatives is that we'll be there for you. And you can't just say that in words. You actually have to do something to earn that trust from the consumer that you will be there for them.
Well, Deb,
so
you're going
to in that whole digital experience piece.
You're going to be there for our audience at CCW Nashville. You were there for them throughout today's conversation. I really appreciated it because you really spoke about the idea that what it takes to really be human. When you're going to say that you want to make a human connection, when you're going to say you want to put the member first, you have to believe it. But more importantly, when you look at how it could favorably impact the contact center, how it could impact your interactions with customers, your customer retention, how it could even make you more efficient, you could say it, you can mean it, and you don't have to regret it. You're not going to have to go back and say, well, humanity's out the window, now we're going to be number-centric. You become number-centric by virtue of being human-centric, because when you're creating the right experience, when you're putting the right mindset behind your digital channels, behind your technology, it works out for your customers, it works out for your business, and I don't care how skeptical you are of the customer experience, you can't argue with those outcomes. So, again, thank you so much, Deb, and really looking forward to Nashville.
Yes, thank you so much, Brian. I am as well, and the essence of the conversation that we'll be having in Nashville is, we begin with self. So if I feel good about it, we can transcend that mindset over to the customer experience. It's a win-win for everyone. So looking forward to it.
Thanks again so much, and for CCW Digital, this has been Brian Cantor.